Hello, welcome to our panel on digital diplomacy and soft power. My name is Asiya Beliukhanova. I lead marketing and communications for PWC Kazakhstan. And today, together with our esteemed panelists, we will talk about how governments, essentially countries, institutions, and organizations can amplify their narrative, attract investors, clients, and ultimately achieve their goals through communications in a digital world that we live in today. And in order to have a comprehensive discussion about the topic, we have a broad panelists today who represent government organizations, who have extensive diplomatic experience, businesses, business associations, IFIs, international financial institutions, and of course, the media. And to kick off our conversations, I would like to start by addressing to Mr. Vladimir Norov. Mr. Norov was Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Uzbekistan. He has extensive diplomatic experience, and today he is the chairman of the Central Asian Associations for Artificial Intelligence. Now, Mr. Norov, my question to you would be, you've experienced diplomacy in a more traditional way and in a current environment. So from your perspective, what are the major shifts that you see that happened in a diplomatic communication as it has become more real-time, more immediate, and more public?
First of all, I would like to thank organizers of this forum for invitation to this panel session, and personally you, Asiya, for inviting me. You said that I should be here, and good morning to everyone. I'm had privilege to work during 30 years, perhaps 3 decades in diplomacy, and I began my diplomatic career in 1995. In this time, certainly, it was traditional and classical diplomacy when any information or any about foreign policy priorities were, first of all, it will be discussed and formulated, and then it will be brought to public. And in this time for communication, we had only a fax machine, and we had not yet internet in beginning 1995. It was only modem when we communicate in office with each other and with our embassies. And in the end of 95, penetrated internet. We connected to internet, our Uzbekistan, and then we began to develop our website. It became very important to use email and website for communication and for fast delivering the information and receiving response. At the same time, it should be said, first, when 98, I appointed as an ambassador in Germany, we had no one website. With my staff, we prepared this website on German language. It was good. But now diplomacy have moved from controlled communication to an area of permanent connectivity. And information moved slowly in the past, and we had the luxury of time for verifying facts, consult partners, and formulate coherent response before spreading and speaking publicly. Today, this environment vanished, and with developing social media networks like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and now is LinkedIn, with the 4 major consequences this transformation for modern diplomacy. First of all, the acceleration of speed. This information spread about any events, connected to internal or foreign policy of any country. It is immediately spread over the world, not only in the region, but over the world during minutes and seconds, sometimes seconds. And certainly the governments, Minister of Foreign Affairs, not always was ready to respond such quickly. The second, it is changing the relationship with the citizen, because now government, by using Twitter, by using Facebook and Instagram can directly communicate with the citizen, with the business community, with mass media, with diaspora, and with in any part of the world where have the interest. But at the same time, with such advantages from digital diplomacy, certainly there is some risk and challenges. First of all, the rise of misinformation, the fakes. And we're witnessing it, everyone, about now how in some countries, in time of election, it's such fake news or misinformation spread it from outside. And at the same time, we're witnessing the growth of the role of power of non-state actors. First of all, it is tech companies. Big tech companies now very actively engaging in the spreading information and sometimes manipulating. And we now operate under immense pressure to react with the hours or even minutes, as I said previously, yet diplomacy has always relied on the strategic, patient, and careful analysis. It was some reaction to any action from foreign countries which is have connection to interests or priorities your country. The decision made on the basis of analyzing opinion of experts, and after this, it was certainly brought to the leadership of country. After this, when you're receiving permission to go to public, it was such mechanism before. Today, it is not working. Today, it's not working. And complex issues resist simply solution, but at the same time, it is reality. Thus, a modern challenge is balancing speed with wisdom and communicating promptly while ensuring accuracy and preserving space of dialogue. And a new relationship with citizens, it is, as I said, it is direct engagement. We are no longer speaking solely through traditional media. Today, foreign ministers and embassies can engage directly with the domestic and global audience. In 2003, after finishing my post as an ambassador in Germany, I was the first deputy minister, and I was only one person who communicated with the mass media, foreign representative, and about the priority, about some direction of our foreign policy, and so on. But now is certainly we're witnessing rising the public diplomacy. This is a powerful tool for, especially for countries like Uzbekistan. Public diplomacy played important role. The last 8 years after election, the president, as President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, he focused all our state institutions to be more open. It began when it was very challenged sometimes for our ministers to give interview, because before it was not permitted, it was not practical. And I worked in 2018 at the head of Institute for Strategic Studies under the president. When I came appointed, I said, where website? Where institute have not website, not Facebook, and nothing. And that's why it was a big challenge for me to convince my staff. They said, why? It is qualified information. I said, what you're writing, it is published in news before you wrote about it. That's why it was important to transmitting, because now it was important for public diplomacy after the decades of contradiction between our countries over the water, transborder waters, or over the border issues. It was important public diplomacy to convince the people that Uzbekistan foreign policy directed for strengthening regional cooperation, and we have now very best result of this. And but at the same time, when you using this digital diplomacy net as a social mass media or Twitter or some others, it is demanded more scrutiny. It is very careful. Every gesture, because any your statement, any your words will be analyzed. And that's why it is very big such challenge, certainly for diplomats. Not everyone was ready for this. Sometimes I am looking how our diplomats, who worked with me, whom I now is as ambassadors working with many of them, are looking how they're using these social networks, and some very active. And now new generation of diplomats, they very easily using this.
Thank you.
At the same time, as a misinformation, as I told before, we are such disinformation campaigns and cyber operation, very big challenge. We, for example, in Uzbekistan, 64% of the crimes, it is cyber crimes. The same, it is cybercrime for the digital diplomacy, big challenge, and disinformation, fakes. It was time when the former Prime Minister of Great Britain made fake from him. He began to outline the priority of foreign policy of Great Britain, certainly contrary to the reality. And the false narrative spread it globally before the trust can catch up, and this undermines trust between states and complicates crisis management. Trust between states, it is important. It is important. That's why I worked 3 years as the Secretary General of SCO, and one of the principles, Shanghai Spirit as I name it, mutual trust, mutual respect, and mutual development, because mutual trust, from this beginning, any relationship, bilateral or multilateral. So, role of AI. We now see this AI now actively use it in all our life area, in economy, in social life, and the AI began to rise their productivity, and we are now more focusing on the, with our association, AI Association, to help to our agencies, to our universities, to our ministers, to develop or integrating AI in our economy, and because AI have the more communication capabilities.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Norov. I think we will talk about AI on the next round of questions. It's a comprehensive and interesting topic to talk to. Now, I would like to address Mr. Abdullah Abdukadyrov. Mr. Abdukadyrov is a doctor of economics, and he worked at the core of the financial reforms in Uzbekistan through his role as a vice minister of finance. He has also contributed to developing investment climate in Uzbekistan through his work as an advisor to the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade. And today, Mr. Abdukadyrov is working as an acting head of the Agency for Strategic Reforms. Now, Mr. Abdukadyrov, your agency sits at the point where global best practices meet local implementation. And I wanted to ask you, what are the most common misconceptions that you see between how governments are designing their reforms and the way that investors are interpreting them? Thank you.
Thank you, Asiya. I think where is the lack is there is a lack between the big announcements, commitments, and the execution. Because ambitions, each given country has, each given authority has. But when it comes to the execution, when it comes to deliver the promises, there is a lack always. There are many reasons for that. Sometimes expectations are different. Sometimes the operational power is not there. Sometimes even narratives are different. And here, I guess, one of the solutions might be to establish more open and more intense dialogues between the investors and the countries which are hosting those investors. And one of the problems is here that every investor main motivation is to make money. But the expectations of the hosting country is more to bring the value. And here's already the difference, number one. And number two, in my opinion, the country, hosting country, has to give a promises which is absolutely in his hands, in his operational power. Sometimes the hosting country or country's representatives are promising something which is not in their hands, and they are creating false expectations. And here's the problem. And based on that, I would love to say that in our country, the political level understanding of the priorities are getting changed. And we would love to offer to investors 6 basic fundamental values. Number 1 is political stability, which is existing in this region. The second, our geography. We are in the middle of the Eurasian continent, and we are in the middle of different cultures, between China, between Europe, between Russia, and the global East. So that geography needs to be used and needs to be mentioned. The third, we have a heritage of not only the Islamic world, but many other things. We have inherited Zoroastrianism, we have inherited Buddhism, so we are multicultural in many ways by historical heritage as well. So our heritage, inherited heritage, is one of the assets we want to offer to our investors as well. The fourth is the human capital. Human capital considered not only existence of the working capital, but also the quality of that human capital, which is intended to develop in a more qualitative way. And fifth, but not last, is we are not considering Uzbekistan as a one unique country, but as a whole region. Central Asia is one geographic location and economical interest point. And that is our approach. And also, we would love to offer that our infrastructure, which we have inherited and we have developed in this country, also infrastructure for the business infrastructure of roads, communications, etc. Which, again, this is a very positive asset that we are going to offer to foreigners. So, in all, whatever we say, we are mentioning here, it's something which is in our hands and in our control, not beyond of our control. And that is important shift, because we are not offering just the resources. Of course, we are rich for the resources, but that's not enough. Resources you might have everywhere, but the political stability is an issue of consistency, is an issue of stability of your business. This is it.
Thank you for your brief yet very comprehensive answer, Mr. Abdulkadirov. It looks like we have a certain recipe now being shaped. Mr. Norov talked about speed and wisdom, and now you talk about open dialogue and consistency. Now I would like to turn to Ms. Nargiza Alikulova, who represents Asian Development Bank. ADB is one of the largest, if not the largest, international financial institutions with over 13 billion committed projects in Uzbekistan. And also ADB quite recently in the spring held annual meetings in Samarkand. It's one of the rare events that happened in the region. So Nargiza, my sincere congratulations on that. And I guess my question would be more practical in these terms. What does it take to make that kind of event successful? Because when you're hosting annual meeting of a large IFI, you're not only organizing an event, but you're bringing governments, you're bringing investors and larger audience into the country. So give us the recipe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Asiya. Yes, I fully agree that annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank is not just event, it's a clear message, it's positioned country not only in the region but globally. And I would like to highlight here two important factors. First, the context and timing, the time when the annual meeting was conducted amidst global shocks and disruptions in logistics, and flights were cancelled. And we had this conflict, Middle East conflict. It was challenging, but at the same time, it could clearly position Uzbekistan as open, as safe place to come and to invest. This is the first. And the second, the venue which was chosen for this annual meeting, the Samarkand, which historically has been the center for the Great Silk Road, and the center for crossroad of ideas, trade routes, and people. It's also a clear message that this region and the country is about connectivity, about regional cooperation, and the topic of the annual meeting was about regional cooperation and connectivity. So that all was aligned. On the operational side, I would like to highlight 3 key points. Also, people working behind the scenes. We were in very close collaboration and cooperation with the Ministry of Investments and Industry, Presidential Administration, and Asian Development Bank's Department of Communication. We all worked as one team because we shared understanding. We had one clear goal and narrative to conduct successfully this annual meeting. Second, the system and speed and internal communication we established, very fast exchange of news, all communication products, and responding quickly to all emerging requests from media. It also helped us to achieve great visibility globally. And third, the quality of media engagement. We could accredit 90 top-tier international media outlets to bring them to the annual meeting, and also 50 prominent local outlets. And this is and focusing not just on the reach, but on the quality of coverage. So as a result, this was the most highly covered annual meeting in the history of the Asian Development Bank.
Okay, my congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
That's a really great achievement. I want to stop here because I hear speed a lot, and probably one of the new ingredients that you added to our conversation was also alignment between government and the institutions. So that's noted. I want to stop and also ask you, Nargiza, about, okay, so you bring that kind of event, and it certainly brings a lot of opportunities and the spotlight to the countries, but at the same time, it poses certain risk which needed to be handled carefully from the communication side. Could you talk about that as well?
Yeah, of course, when you bring such a great number of media to your country, you cannot just expect that they will cover event. They want to engage into the dialogue. So we need a government which is ready, and participants who is ready to engage in media. And so this brings Uzbekistan to the global investor conversations. And also on the annual meeting side, what we could achieve, we could involve Deputy Prime Minister Hadjaev to the CNBC debate, which was also the first in the history of Uzbekistan and annual meeting. But this was a great lessons learned and signal to all other government also and high-level government officials that we just need to shift from event-based PR, when they just come and cover well-prepared news releases, but we need to be ready to engage more and establish dialogue with media, because media will request this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nargiza. That's an interesting insight from that kind of perspective. Now, I'd like to turn to Mr. Oybek Shaykhov. Mr. Shaykhov is the founder and the board member of the Euro-US, and he is also executive chairman of the East-West Group. Mr. Shaykhov, you've seen an large inflow from the European companies into Uzbekistan, and I wanted to ask you quite practically, what are the first questions that you receive from the European companies coming into Uzbekistan when they first enter, and also what are the signals that matter most before they decide to actually move into the country and establish a business?
Thank you, first of all, to have me on this panel, both to the company and also to the organizers, of course. Euro-US, briefly introducing today, Euro-US is the largest business association, international one, not just in Uzbekistan, but also in Central Asia. We are the official European Chamber of Commerce. We represent 180 companies today in Uzbekistan, most of them European. I see some of our members. I'm very proud to see them and to support them in Uzbekistan. European companies, of course, they are much more hesitant than some regions to invest into new markets. All of us, from Uzbekistan have experienced the counterparty in any conversation outside of Uzbekistan not knowing where Uzbekistan is at one point in history. I'm very happy to say that this is not the case anymore. Over the last 7 years, the situation has changed to a level where it is very rare that somebody doesn't know where Uzbekistan is. Europe is not an exception. And since we're talking about digital communication as well, the social media plays an enormous role in getting the information out there. The government is consistent in not only the talk, but also in the walk. We have an economic growth which has momentum, but yet at the same time you have actually coming European investors and showing traction results in this market. Coming back to your question, I would like to add maybe an important component to the things you have already mentioned, and that's trust. For an investor to come to a market, they have to trust the market to be consistent, to be stable enough, but also to have opportunity to plan ahead. So execution, as our colleagues mentioned already, is critical, and yet the trust is built over time. In negotiation, we call it rapport, right? So we meet the first time, we get an evaluation, an impression of a person. It's more or less the same with the country. And European investors, as most others, need to have that trust into the government, into the reform agenda, into the consistency, into institutionalization of reforms. Personal relationships can only go that far. Today, Uzbekistan is sort of moving into the next phase of reform, where reforms really become institutional, and the organization of my colleague here, I think, is a good example where institutional reforms really become the fundamental, in a way that they will carry this trust with the investors forward. It's one thing when we say reforms are irreversible. It's another thing when we see institutions working in a way that no matter who is leading them, the execution is going to be there. I'm very happy to say that some of the institutions are fundamentally working on not on advertising, but on delivering. And this is where the delivery is where things will matter, and this is where the trust is built. We have but of course, engagement is critical. We have ministers and deputy prime ministers. You have Deputy Prime Minister Hadjayev, Minister Kudratov, which are very active on social media as well. We can see that especially on LinkedIn, where we have this sort of very open, transparent communication, but that can only work in conjunction with delivery, that we have European investors actually coming up and saying that, yes, we have achieved progress in specific projects and specific elements of our discussion, and then we have actually made not just profit, but we have made a commitment. And this is the difference with European investors, I think, because they're not so much profit-oriented, but they are oriented on a commitment of a long-term engagement with the country, and that comes from a consistency, and that comes from a trust perspective. That's what, in our experience, of course, this is also what we have achieved. This is what makes Europe a strong partner in most parts of the world, is that they are there for a long time, but it takes them much longer to get there. There is a very well-known Russian proverb that we start slow, but we move fast. And with Europeans, this is more or less the case. We are, of course, hoping to see much more European companies present in the market, but that is also the case that it takes much longer. And that's where Uzbekistan is really coming on now, where the trust is built strong enough for European Union really investors to come here and to be here for long term. Thank you.
I think here's the key elements of where we are really lacking as a government. In my opinion, the first is a kind of reaction. There is no feedback. If someone is, there is a feedback, but not enough or not clear, then we should be more proactive on making the feedbacks. Whatever the proposal or whatever suggestion is coming, we have to give a response or we have to react in a more open, more friendly manner. The second, the communication is really lacking. In my opinion, when decision is taken, we have to give some reason why exactly this decision is taken, another one. Because always there are many options, but some decision is taken for some reason. Then we have to explain why exactly this is. So the logic of taking the decision should be transparent, should be excessive, should be kind of understandable and acceptable for both the population and the investors as well. So again, the quality of communication is still not there. Thank you.
Thank you for this interesting remark, and thank you, Oybek, for this comprehensive, very spot-on answer coming from you as representative of a trade association, largest one in Central Asia. It has a lot of weight. And thank you for this additional ingredients that you've mentioned, trust to plan ahead. That's noted. And also what I hear from you, and I think it's also important not only for Uzbekistan, but for any country in our region, is irreversibility of the reforms, no matter who leads them. I think it's very important. So thank you for that. For my next question, I would like to turn to Russian. So if you need, please use your headphones. I would like to address now Mr. Pavel Nasychov from Kursiv Media. Pavel, хочу вас спросить.
I want to ask you, the Nargiz mentioned about the representatives of the government to talk and to deliver what's happening, how to communicate. And from your perspective, you are covering business news, how the situation has improved in Uzbekistan, broadly in region in this regard. Thank you very much, Asiya. First of all, I wanted to express my gratitude for invitation in this important day for Uzbekistan. Everyone woke up very early to watch the football match, and I want to congratulate on this event, the goal that reached, and this is the diplomacy, I would say. And about your question, in Kursiv is working in Uzbekistan for approximately 7 years, and we are from the very beginning the Kazakh media, and we have entered the Uzbekistan market, and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan market is different, and it's connected with the journalism development. If 7 years ago the Kursiv was only entering the Uzbekistan, the media field looked very different, and one of the main issues, I would say, and the hardship, this is the openness of the businesses, of the government officials to talk with media. 7 years ago, to get the comment in such forum from the public official was very hard. They always wanted to get official requests to their organization, and the answer usually you get after 2 weeks. And currently we have the different situation, not only in the government officials, in business, in the expert community. 7 years ago, there wasn't a good, proper expert community which was ready to communicate, to answer the questions, to provide comments to the media. Mr. Abdullah Abdulkadirov was one of the bravest first ones who helped us a lot. And the media has changed itself, and they are covering more popular topics, and the community started receiving the media as a very powerful tool in solving the issues, the ecology, the domestic violence, the protection of the cultural heritage. And this resonance generated through the mass media can cause and accelerate the decision-making process. And the domestic violence, the ecology, the protection of women, the protection of the cultural heritage, all this was led to the adoption of the laws, the normative regulatory acts. And it's very important that we have this dialogue, this diplomacy inside the country, that the government listens to the population, listens to the mass media. And currently business is meeting these challenges as well. Business has lots of programs, projects on support of women, on ecological projects, on ESG agenda. Regarding the expertness that we have mentioned, this is a positive tendency as well, the development of the mass media. When we were just entering, we couldn't have anyone who would comment. Only on the Facebook, someone can start commenting different topics. The situation has changed. The professionals which were in Uzbekistan and from other countries, not only in the economic field, but in PR, media communications, and with joint efforts, the business has become more open, the government became open, and it attracts more attention and investment as well. And fortunately, we have more specialists who are ready to comment. And we have still issues in such sectors as energy, transport. We don't have experts in these sectors. Regarding the digital diplomacy, I wanted to highlight a very interesting feature of Uzbekistan. This is the growth of the social network LinkedIn. For the last several years, the number of users has increased, and compared to Kazakhstan, the LinkedIn accounts number is different. If in Kazakhstan, if roughly saying, it's like a steady growth, in Uzbekistan it's very rapid. It's additional 500, 600 users per month, I would say. And we are the active users of LinkedIn in Uzbek media as well, and lots of companies are interested in publishing their ads, materials, and the companies that are going beyond Uzbekistan to the markets abroad, and they are opening, and the government officials even opening not only their professional accounts but the personal accounts as well. It can be some small detail, but it's very important one, and I am very glad that in Uzbekistan this personal account in LinkedIn, the page of the company is becoming part of its working etiquette, I would say. And when we talk with companies, with colleagues, they are connecting with the government officials through LinkedIn as well. For example, Mr. Oybek Shaykhov, who developed the Euro-Uz through LinkedIn as well. This is one of the good examples. Despite such positive change, some challenges still exist, and they are forming the media market. This is very interesting situation connected with the ad market of the media. I think more foreign companies, they face when they invest money in the mass media, requires to pay for this they consider this as an ad, and it, unfortunately, maybe for us, fortunately, because we get additional revenues, but it's not always a good thing. Thank you very much. The ad market is very important, a separate market for discussion. And Mr. Abdullah Abdulkadirov wanted to add something. I wanted to express my gratitude to Cursive Company for choosing this path in Central Asia, but I wouldn't say the same about other companies such as Vesti, Sputnik, and they have the narrative on comparing the success of different countries and artificially develop the competitiveness of two countries, which is not good. This is not the thing that they want to see. We want to see the unity of nations, to see the common points. And the borders that we have right now, several hundred years ago, we didn't have this. And we used to be one nation with one history. And that's why I think that currently we are the nations of Central Asia, united by the common history and I would say common future as well. And China is the only country which says the Central Asian countries, they consider it as countries with the common future for China. It's a very interesting narrative when you get the knowledge that you have the common future, you change your approach. And I'm glad that they are promoting this narrative, and I'm glad that the Cursive is promoting this narrative. And this is the secret of your success as well.
I think, yes, the topic of our regional position in Central Asia is also important, and I'm glad that we see in the media and also across social media, for example, this today's match between Uzbekistan. We've seen that countries across Central Asia have cheered for Uzbekistan, so it's also a good example of that. Now, I would like to comment on what Mr. Pavel Nosachev have said and add another ingredient to our mix is that government have to be very accurate and really react in a high speed to the acute questions that are being raised in societies. It's also it's one of the risk factors in the communication. Now I would like to turn my next question to Mr. Leandro Stravinsky from the Investor magazine and also a founder of the Beyond Investment Group, a group of investors spanning 48 countries with the investment potential of over $60 billion. Leandro, what is the best example you have seen of governments using digital diplomacy? And also from your work as an investor editor across Central Asia, what lessons are the most relevant for countries looking to strengthen how their investment stories are landing?
Thank you very much for the invitation of the forum. I want to start the discussion here by bringing the attention of the audience to think and reflect what can we learn from luxury brands into our countries and into our companies. I know that sounds surprising, but in our company, we have always, since the beginning, we are based in Paris. It's where luxury and fashion is the center of it in the world. And what we learn is that the approach that we're giving to investors, the approach we're giving to countries, the approach we're giving to business is moving towards a very tailor-made and service-oriented sphere. This is what we're working on for the past 20 years. Here in Uzbekistan, we have been working with the government and different partners for the past 5 years. In Central Asia, we're working in multiple countries as well. I have seen some of the members here with the publication that we have just launched now recently with the Office of the Government. And I think one of the reasons that makes our editions quite successful is the fact that we work with a club of investors, which means today there is a lot of information out there. We are living in the world of excess of information. How can we make our voices heard? How can we be different from others? What we do at our company is that we use the same format or the same knowledge than luxury brands. We know who are our clients. We know their expectations. We know when we met them. We know what happened in that meeting. You know, tomorrow you're going to go to a luxury shop. If you buy a shoe, they're going to remember it forever. They're going to know what did you do, what is your needs, if you like more that color, more the other. I think we can apply the same situation to business. On our case, we have today a club of investors, 165,000 investors in 48 countries. They represent over $60 billion of investment opportunities. We know who they are. We know which investments they are looking for. We know in this publication, maybe I would avoid sending this publication from Uzbekistan for clients that are going to be investing in Latin America. So we're not going to waste our time there. We're going to put all of our focus and energy on doing that. So what we are working together with the government here is working on the same mentality. I always discuss that with the government here in terms of even digital. We should stop addressing foreign investors as a whole. I think the whole work, I think an investor will remember from a country is the service. How he was treated in Uzbekistan, how was his meetings with the ministers. Because I think that investors, at least on our level, very high-profile investors, you know, ministers, they're having 100 meetings per day here on the conference. I had the opportunity to meet, of course, with many of them, but I think what investors are going to remember is not of that meeting, is the afterwards of that meeting, is the customer service of that meeting. Did they call me? Have they sent me the email they promised? Did they do things on time? My experience here in Uzbekistan has been very positive since the beginning. I'm not saying that to please the government, but it's really truth. I mean, since the beginning when we were working here, I always say to the government officials here that in other countries where we work, sometimes government works at a much lower speed than the private sector. I think here there is a few strengths that I would consider in Uzbekistan to be special. I think first there is a unity in terms of the business community with the vision of the president, with the vision of the government. I think in a way the country is moving all together in the same direction. I think that's a big strength. Not all the countries can say that. Secondly, I feel that when I had the opportunity to meet from, you know, deputy prime ministers, His Excellency the President, the administration, ministers, and what I can say is that every time you meet with them, there is always a very good staff behind it. Normally by very young, actually motivated, you know, Uzbek people that are really in a hurry. They feel the need of speed. I think that it really gives motivations to investors as well. And my suggestion as well, moving forward, in terms of how the government, you know, they're always asking questions. How can we improve our communication? What should we do? We always say the same. Sometimes it's better to do less but more. You know, it looks contradictory, but when we're actually aiming at reaching foreign investors as a whole, that looks like a big task. I think what we should do is that identify. I had, for example, I'll give you an example. I had a meeting before coming here with the ambassador of Uzbekistan in France. We work very closely with them. And our suggestion to them is really to make sure that, you know, the Minister of Investment now is placing a representative of business in every embassy, which is very good. And what we're telling them is not just to promote the country to foreign investors, is to going out there knowing exactly who they're looking for. And when they go to that meeting, know everything about that person, about the meeting, and matching that with Uzbekistan. I think that's much better than just, you know, sitting in a meeting and then listening to what the investor wants. I think if you end up meeting someone and you knowing things about them, that creates empathy, that creates a lot of, wow, you know about us, you know? There are so many companies here, but you know about our company. So I think Uzbekistan is going on that direction. I think if we learn those values from the luxury perspective, we can definitely use that for our business. And we are very proud to have done now our 5th publication. What we have done it already on the 5th time. Normally, the average readership of a publication like this gets to be around 400 to 500,000 readers. The one of Uzbekistan last year, we got it 1.2 million readers. So that's quite impressive. And you wonder why. On my understanding, first of all, Uzbekistan is the place to be right now. There is a lot of buzz around it. There is a lot of information about it. I think a lot of investors are saying to themselves, if I'm not there, I'm missing something. But at the same time, we also feel that the fact that we're having these 1.2 million readers also shows that there is a lack of information. So I think this is the time and the place to provide those investors with the information they need, with but the information tailor-made to their needs. So I think this is the concept that we have been working on, and I think this is something that countries can, learn, and also companies can benefit from it.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing up this important topic about precision in targeting specific audiences. It's quite important in communication, of course. And now my next question would be to my fellow colleague from PWC, Jeffrey McMillan, who oversees brand marketing and communication of PWC as a managing director. Now, Jeff, you work in a very diverse and interesting region, which had undergone significant change in the way it is being perceived over the past 2 decades. And my question to you would be, from that experience, you've observed how countries change the narratives around them. So what are the best to-dos in order to develop and sustain this new narrative that the country wants to shape? And the second one, what role can business actually play there alongside the government to reinforce that message that's being sent?
Thanks very much, Asia. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for putting this panel in the agenda. I want to thank the local team as well for the invitation to come and take part in the panel. As you mentioned, Asia, I do oversee a pretty diverse and interesting region. At PwC Central and Eastern Europe, we do cover 27 countries, from the Baltics, Central Europe, the Balkans, across the Caucasus, Central Asia, all the way to Mongolia. And in my role as Managing Director of Brand Marketing Communications, I oversee our brand and messaging across all of those markets. And of course, it's in my interest to track also the national, institutional, economic narratives of the countries where we do business. Now, Mongolia might not be the first country that comes to mind when you think of Central and Eastern Europe, but it is one of our markets, as is Uzbekistan, by the way. And I'm originally from Canada. I've been in the region for over 25 years, first 14 in Moscow, now the last 11 in Warsaw, where I'm based. In the last year, I've been twice to Uzbekistan. It's a dynamic, emerging market for us, and one where we have a great interest in partnering with the forum, working on projects of national importance. So this topic of digital diplomacy and soft power is really dear to my heart. But to your question, Asia, looking back over the last couple of decades in Central and Eastern Europe, I think one lesson stands out. As proud as I am of my role and the work that we do with members of this panel, countries don't change their international reputation through communications campaigns alone. It's part of it, but where the real magic happens are when reforms, economic development, business experience, public narrative, all reinforce themselves consistently over time. When we first started thinking about this panel, Asia, I think our initial focus was on specifically platforms, analytics, tools, right? But actually picking up on something Mr. Norov said, the transition from this controlled communications to permanent connectivity, I think what's more interesting is it's the kind of always-on, real-time situation in which not only countries but companies have to manage their reputation in real time. And the key to that, I think, is not so much the platforms as the consistency of messaging and narrative across those platforms. And I think in the current environment, where you have like an LLM-driven, AI-first environment, the consistency of narrative across the channels is where the real important work is done. And if I can just take a quick minute as a representative of the business community, I think the role of businesses in managing their brands is also instructive here. And in our experience, PwC, as you know, Asia, we recently underwent a pretty significant global rebrand of our own brand. And just last week, I was in Zagreb presenting on our rebrand. I think some of the lessons from that are instructive for thinking about how nations and control their narratives as well. So currently, it should be obvious that countries are no longer just competing for investment capital. They're competing for attention, right? But sometimes attention alone is not enough. In our case, we're a legacy brand. We provide professional services, financial statements, audit, tax consulting, but also management consulting, IT consulting, implementations. And our problem over time with our brand was that we had no problem with awareness and familiarity. What the problem was is that what our buyers and clients and the market knew about us wasn't consistent with the ways in which we changed our business to serve our clients on newer types of services. So in fact, our issue was more changing the narrative, right? And increasing consideration of the new types of services we were provided. So what did we do? Did we initially rush to a communications campaign or a visual identity rebrand? No. We went deep, we researched, we did a lot, like 2 years of work before we even launched the rebrand. And we looked at what is it we're known for, what are those attributes we're associated with, and then how do we want to push that and refresh that narrative? And that involved landing on one consistent story of who we are and what we represent. For a company that has over 350,000 employees in hundreds of countries across the world, very difficult to lead with our offerings. So instead of the what, we looked at the how. And our whole brand campaign was around client outcomes, how we invest in X so you can achieve Y. And the important thing is, once we finally landed on that core narrative, we went out to market compellingly, consistently, such that the brand materials you'll see in London, New York, Paris is the exact same film you'll see here in the Tashkent airport as you come in. And driving that consistency is what helped us reverse a bit of decline in brand value. And we've increased our brand value by 19% in 1 year alone. So why am I talking about all of this? What does this have to do with, digital diplomacy, soft power? And I think it's the fact that, the strongest national narratives themselves are also not just about the country, but about opportunities, capabilities, that future that investors can achieve by working together with the country. And here, I think we have some successful examples across Central and Eastern Europe of that. And just to quickly name a couple, and then I want to get on to Uzbekistan, because I'm just like I think it's so instructive what I've seen over the last couple of days in terms of how Uzbekistan is positioning itself. But just to give a few CEE examples, I think the most famous one is probably Estonia, right? And how Estonia has positioned itself as a digital governance innovation hub. PWC, a few years ago, we had a big marketing leaders conference bringing people from around the world to Tallinn. And one of the almost like obligatory components of that meeting was to tour the eEstonia Center and to hear all about the ways in which Estonia has become a global champion in digital government. But what's interesting about the Estonia case is that they're also quite open and transparent about challenges they've had as well. Major cyber attacks in 2007, and acknowledging some of the threats, some of the challenges they've had, but then using that to kind of underscore some of the core parts of their narrative around being resilient, innovative, and committed to democratic ideals. Another example, Poland, right, where I'm based. Poland has long sought to reposition itself from an association with the Eastern Bloc to being a resilient European growth market, nearshoring destination within Central Europe, right? And, it's a great success story. They're now entering the G20. I don't know, I think yesterday there was the news that Poland will be graduating from the World Bank development loans regime by 2031, another strong signal. But one thing I think is interesting is that in terms of like digital diplomacy and major events, there's one event that we partner with in Poland called Impact CEE. Big event, I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of it, but if you're anywhere in Poland in the last few months, you couldn't help seeing in the digital space information about this huge event. And of course, you've got the Prime Minister talking about opportunities in the country. This year, one of the guests was IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva. But what's interesting is the way in which that event positions itself, not just on economics and development, but lifestyle as well. And you've got guests including like former President Barack Obama, Amal Clooney, artist Jeff Koons is coming to speak. And so it's such a diversified mixture of people, and it really does extend the narrative beyond one of economic development to like lifestyle as well. So I think the reason I'm talking about that is digital diplomacy is about creating a story, But really importantly, it's about translating reforms, ambitions, and opportunities into signals that international audience can understand and trust. And just to pick up on a few things, do I have time to pick up on a few things about Uzbekistan specifically?
Few minutes.
Right. So here's the thing. Yesterday, in the plenary session, and with the handout that was given, what really blew me away about the way in which Uzbekistan is positioning itself is, of course, in that wonderful video you had to open the plenary yesterday, there was lots of information about real economic achievements. But what I found most significant was the real focus on the reform agenda and the Uzbekistan 2030 strategy. And just think of some of the things that are being emphasized. Rules-based management, clarified institutional accountability, digitalization of monitoring systems, and this whole messaging around, the Uzbekistan 2030 strategy, the fact that you've taken 444 strategy indicators, put them into a system for like AI-driven and digitally transparent accountability of institutional reforms. It's a really strong message. So it's not just digital in message, but digital in the substance of how the reforms are managed as well. So I commend Uzbekistan in the way in which it's tied digitalization as part of its core national narrative. I think that's really significant. Finally, I'll just say that this event itself, I know that we've got, it's my first time participating, and I know the participation count is up over 9,000 delegates. But what I think is really significant is that I'm really got a sense that things are happening not just for the people in the room, but for people outside of Uzbekistan, people that are like watching, following the increased interest. So even outside the country, I think, again, digital diplomacy-wise, this event itself is a great example of that kind of dialogue between government, institutions, and business.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. I think it's a perfect summary of the discussion we had so far. Now, just to close up, I have some blitz questions for you, and I would ask you to fit your answer into a very short narrative. And Mr. Norov, if I may, can I start with you? My question to you would be, if you could delete one stereotype that investors still hold about Central Asia, one stereotype, what would it be?
First of all, it is looking to Central Asia through the prisms of commodity. Nevertheless, last decades more changed, and our economy in Uzbekistan mostly became more industrialized and diversified. And as President yesterday announced, attracting $30 billion in the advanced manufacturing, the same time electric engineering, light industry, robotics, for example, it is new one, but such should be. But more important, the Central Asia today began big producer of green energy. Our potential 3,000 gigawatt, it is solar energy in Uzbekistan, and 1 terawatt wind energy, Kazakhstan. So now we see this demand for energy growing with the growing data centers. The market of data centers today, $400 billion. In 2030 will be $1 trillion. And Central Asia, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, now portraying themselves at the center of international center of data centers. But unfortunately, not yet Western, our partners, looking seriously to this. Now Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan will export green energy to Europe from 2030. At the same time, what is important to mention that in parallel with this is that Central Asian countries began facing fast growth of digital economy and AI development and export of ICT service. In 2018, Uzbekistan export of ICT was $83 million. Last year, $1 billion. And 2030, it will be $5 billion. And AI, they will contribute $1.5 billion. That's why I think this mindset of our Western investors should be changed. Another one, China is more active in our region. Such is now is concerning our some Western partners that China is, yes, China coming with concrete technology. And the Mostar and the Aqua companies opened green energy potential of Central Asia, mostly Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, by using technology of Chinese because it is cheap. And we now, by some assessment, in 2030, Uzbekistan 44% of energy, it will be green,
Renewables.
renewable energy. That's why it is important to look to China's. First, I try to convince our Western partners that they should follow the way of Aqua and Mostar. First, it made Total. Total now constructing Mirny, a wind energy plant in Kazakhstan.
Yes.
1 gigawatts energy, wind energy, but technology, it is from China. It is important. That's why mindset should be, and when we're talking about digital diplomacy, we should look the advancement of our Central Asia countries and its huge potential for developing world economy.
Thank you. So moving away from perception as a market of commodities. Interesting. Thank you. My next blitz question would be to Mr. Abdulkadirov. One KPI that you would publish on a monthly basis to prove the reform credibility, what KPI would it be?
If I would know the answer, I wouldn't be sitting here. But I think whatever KPI is, the one performed should be valued, because there are many KPIs, depending on the sector, depending on the activities type. But the one KPI should be there. Whatever promise should be delivered. That's it.
Thank you. My next question, Nargiza. What's the fastest way a government can lose credibility with IFIs? One behavior or maybe one way?
On behavior side, I would say that unwillingness to engage into open and constructive dialogue. And the second, maybe if the storyline you communicate is not consistent with not aligned with the reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shaykhov, what's the single biggest reason that European companies delay entry to the market of Uzbekistan after the first interest?
A lack of follow-up on MOUs.
Okay, good one noted. Pavel, what's one headline that government want to have, but they should really stop chasing?
Прежде всего, не скучные заголовки хотелось бы увидеть, потому что засилие...
I would like to see interesting headlines, because with AI, everything is based on AI, and all the headlines are very boring. So I would vote for the art of making clickbait interesting headings.
What's the most persuasive proof format today? Is it a report? Is it a dashboard? Is it independent ranking? Or maybe a case study that investors really trust and interested in learning more about?
Well, what I learned in business, coming back to the formula I was speaking about on the tailor-made, on the approach, I think that all of those formats are valid. I think what is important is that it's a little bit the same for us, for example, in this publication. At the beginning of this forum, they said, well, let's put the publication everywhere. And we said, we don't have to be everywhere. We have to be at the right places. We have to be in that room or that one or that one. I think you have to know your niche. You have to know where is your place, and I think you have to know that really well. For countries, it's the same. I think all of their formats is very valid. This forum is valid. A forum that is a smaller round table is valid. Digital social media is very valid as well. But I think the approach has always to have a sort of ratio between the objective that you're having and the community that you're reaching. I think the focus should be on that. We are doing that a lot through the work we have doing, because at the same time we're working with Uzbekistan, we're also working with Turkmenistan, with Kyrgyzstan, with so many other countries also in Latin America and in Africa. But how can we place each one of them individually? It's quite a challenge, because at the same time all of these countries are in a way competing among each other. But we always say that competition, of course, is very healthy. But at the same time, you can always find your own place. You have to find your own niche, your strengths. I think people don't realize that Uzbekistan, 10 years ago, they were reaching $4 to $5 billion of FDI every year. Only last year, they got almost $50 billion of it. So the growth is massive. I think that Uzbekistan can today be different than other countries. I believe on having that Uzbek hospitality, but in business, on having the service, but on the public sector. We just mentioned about the MOUs. I think this is something that we can work on. That's lack of service. So we have to, if more we work on that service point, I think more successful we can get as a country, as a business, or anything.
Yes, thank you, Leandro. I think we can name you today the advocate for the for the precise communication. I think, yes, it's important. Now, Jeff, what's one crisis playbook principle that should apply to countries as much as brands?
So crisis communications, right. Well, I mean, it should be clear that overall the objective that we're going for here is not visibility, right? It's credibility. And the key to credibility is consistency. In a crisis, you know, I don't think anyone expects governments, companies to be perfect, but what they do is they expect communication to be early and consistent, right? So I think, you know, in a crisis, uncertainty is more damaging than bad news. And I think contradictory messages are more damaging still. So I think that's the kind of crisis playbook message that applies to the way that both companies and countries are managing their reputations. And I do think that it's the interaction of those two about like the role of business in supporting national and institutional narratives. I mean, people do trust stories, real stories from business that reinforce, support, and play up against official narratives as well. So I think, again, that consistency of narrative is the one key message or key aspect of the playbook that I think is important.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. And just to summarize our discussion, and I think we all can agree that the interest into Uzbekistan, into the region, is definitely there from the companies, from investors. And just to move on beyond those memorandum of understandings, our recipe from this panel would be speed and wisdom from Mr. Vladimir Norov, open dialogue and consistency, alignment between government and institutions in chasing the goals that are there, trust to plan ahead, trust that the business, incoming business plays into the country, irreversible reforms, no matter who leads those reforms, logic behind the decision. Also from Pavel Nesachov, reaction to what is being discussed in the society. It is also very important for government to hear and to respond to that. And the precision in targeting the audience from Leandro. I think Jeff has one more ingredient.
Just let's not underestimate the power of panels like this as well. And you know, this is like, I would consider the beginning of the discussion, and I really do look forward to continuing it. You know, and on behalf of the local office of PWC, we're very interested in continuing the discussion as well.
So we spoke about precision today, thanks to Leandro a lot, and I can say we are precisely ending this panel discussion at the time we were supposed to. Thank you very much for insightful answers. Thank you very much for being here.